Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be from. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Perline Mofford, President of Site Canada. Welcome to our very first Site Sparks education series. I'm thrilled to be your host today and so glad you're able to join us. I see from the great turnout for today's session, we're all reimagining Canada. Local micro incentives never look so good. Something for me I've been passionate about since I got involved in the incentive industry just 6 years ago. And I believe, like AFA does, building back better starts with each of us. I'm delighted to have with me here today, Jennifer Addersall, Director of Incentive Travel Destination Canada, Carolyn Curie, Senior Specialist, Corporate Events, Integrated Marketing and Communications from Economical Insurance. Here's how the format's going to work. Jennifer is going to enlighten us on Destination Canada's integrated economic sector strategy, how this impacts the incentive strategy for business events, how Canada stands as a current top-ranking global destination, and the evolution of micro trends and incentives. After Jennifer, we'll hear from Carolyn, who will give us her perspective on the current corporate incentive strategies, the adoption of micro incentives, and looking in our own backyard for unique and inspiring adventures. So ladies, are you ready? Let's dive in. Jennifer, I'll turn things over to you to get us started.
Oh my gosh, you would think by now, after all of these, we would learn how to unmute ourselves. Thanks, Perline, and thank you all for having me here today. And I'm really looking forward to today's session and sharing what our team has been working on this past year, what it means for a national tourism organization to have a global sector strategy, where we're playing to win, and what we're learning or have learned throughout this journey. So for the better part of 2020, our team took a deep dive into our global sector strategy with extensive research of our audience and target global clusters. And we built a global roadmap to identify areas of opportunity as well as tighten our strategy. At the same time, we developed and are now executing a targeted and focused incentive strategy, a first for Destination Canada business events. But let's start from the beginning. What is the global sector strategy and how does this relate to incentives? Our strategy prioritizes 6 key economic areas that are aligned with our federal government's priorities: technology, life sciences, advanced manufacturing, agribusiness, natural resources, and of course, finance and insurance. As we know, not only are these sectors key economic drivers for our country, but they include corporations and associations that are hosts of conferences, corporate events, and of course, incentives. While we've always played in the incentive market, we now have a clear focus as to why or who we are targeting as our audience. How can we align incentives with our strategy? And how can we ensure we're pushing Canada's messaging out to the right people? By identifying and aligning with top international agencies whose clients are within these thriving and resilient sectors, Canada's sectors. By making connections with these agencies, we can create the tools that assist them with their purchasing journey with their clients. To understand what their tech client wants through the demographics and psychographics of the values of that specific type of group, their desired experiences, and then aligning them to the inventory we have. We connect them to the right DMCs or connect them to key sector contacts that help develop sector-specific tours or experiences as part of their program. It's by providing these tools, these connections, and sharing these stories that assist both our industry and buyers. Based on the research done in 2020, now is the time for Canada to elevate our story and message to the global audience. Our value proposition includes our knowledge capital and our unique and coveted products, as well as the rise of perception of how we've handled the pandemic. With the recent Incentive Travel Industry Index report, post-pandemic Canada is faring high on positive global perception. We've become a desired transatlantic or international destination for future programs. And from intel garnered from the industry index, you see from this slide how Canada fares globally as a desirable destination for future incentive programs. Buyers were asked from these key regions, once they're able to travel again, where would they like to host their next incentive program? And next to regional or domestic travel, Canada is the desired international destination to host these programs. As a very wise person said in a past webinar, and I've since adopted this term, distance isn't an issue, but safety is. And overall, Canada is in a great position in the coming years to attract international incentive programs. People want to know what we have, what we offer, what experiences do we have that may not be as well known. We have the opportunity to leverage the micro trends that we're seeing, like wide open spaces, the outdoors, sustainability, wellness, all these emerging trends that we have within our own backyard. We just need to share this story. So what are the emerging trends? You are all very well knowledge right now in this area. We're all reading the articles. We're attending all of the webinars. We're sitting on all the surveys and reading all of the different publications that are coming out. But how do these trends impact us in Canada? Well, for example, a shift from a consumption to a contribution mentality will impact incentive programming. What legacy do we leave behind? How can we impact communities and our environment in a positive way through the programming? I recently spoke to one of our DMO partners who said when she books programs from APAC, they will only select a program that incorporates the CSR component. For example, her example was tree planting. And the programs that she's booked from China, for example, all incorporate tree planting in Eastern Canada. And of course, incorporation of wellness practices into incentive itineraries. With the current climate, there is a clear focus on mental health, well-being. And there's an ancient Japanese practice called Shirin Yoku, otherwise known as forest bathing. And it's seen a rise in popularity with spiritual, holistic practices involving meditation and being at one with nature. Look at all the abundance of nature, the forests and the rainforests that we have in Canada that can speak to this and capitalize on this trend. And of course, experiences now outweigh the destination. Incentive travel will become less about where to travel and more about the experiences one can only experience when traveling firsthand. We recently conducted a global survey, and when we talked to the clients on the incentive side, we shared the Indigenous experiences we have in Canada. They were genuinely wowed, and they wanted to know more as they were unfamiliar with all these different types of experiences and product. It's something unique to our country that they wanted to share with their earners in their next programs. And of course, authenticity is the new luxury. Love local. Visitors want to understand how locals live, how they work, how they eat. They want to benefit from local expertise and recommendations and link it back to the community that those call home. We were fortunate last year that right before the world went bananas, our team had the opportunity to visit Yellowknife, and we were brought to this beautiful, cozy cabin that was owned by a local, solely to watch the Northern Lights from her backyard. She made us soup, she made us hot cocoa, we drank wine, and we had a wonderful evening where we were all sitting together and hearing firsthand the traditional tales of the Northern Lights, while she sits there with her family and her grandkids and tells the same stories. And of course, bringing it back to cultural experiences, just like I mentioned, specifically authentic experiences, Indigenous experiences that are native to the destination. For example, foraging for medicinal herbs and with an Indigenous elder, and learning from that person how to make medicine from these traditional practices, or just to name one. So that's a lot of information, Pearlie, that I just threw out in about 10 minutes, but I hope that gives you a very brief overview of what myself and our team have been working on last year. You know, I welcome, if you want to call me, if you want to email me, if you want to know more, or if you have ideas or stories that you want to share as part of our storytelling. I always love a good chit chat over the phone. So back to you, Pearlie.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we're going to dive a little deeper into that. But first, we're going to invite Carolyn up, who's going to share with us from a corporate planner standpoint. So Carolyn, thanks for being with us today. As a senior specialist with corporate events and integrated marketing, can you share your planner perspective and share what you've been doing with economical insurance and what you plan to be doing with incentives, meetings, and conferences in 2021 and 2022. Carolyn, over to you.
Sure. Thank you for having me today. I'll tell a little bit about what we did last year and then what we have coming up for this year and how we're looking into 2022. So for 2020, we were lucky enough to be able to squeeze in our biggest incentive at the end of February, as Jennifer said, just before the world went bananas. So we were lucky to do that. And then any of our smaller group incentives were golf trips to US destinations. And like many of you, those spring 2021 trips got moved and postponed to the fall of 2021, and then later to the fall of 2020, and then later to the spring of 2021. For us and our executives, the vaccine rollout has been very important to us being able to do face-to-face events again, and especially for travel. So those spring 2021 events have now been pushed to the fall of 2021. So we're watching how the vaccines will work against the variants, and then of course how the Canadian government handles the travel restrictions since they are American destinations. For this year, any new events that we're planning for 2021, we are looking to continue with some smaller golf events, but those are just one-day ones closer to home. We're in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, so there's lots of fantastic golf in Niagara and Toronto, and then one of the top 10 golf courses, the Westmount Golf Course, is in our own backyard, so we'll definitely be taking advantage of that. As for our largest trip, which we couldn't do this year, obviously, we changed that to a series of micro events. So with that, we look to simulate small group conversations that could be taking place around a dinner table at our large event. So we have a series of small groups of about 4 to 5 of our partners meeting with either the CEO or a senior VP. Those events are an hour and a half in length, and they'll have 45 minutes to have a discussion on what's going on, getting updates from Economical, and then including 45 minutes of a VIP experience. So we worked with as many local vendors as we could on the VIP experiences, and then reached out to an agency to help with the ones that weren't able to be accommodated. So those include things like Scotch tasting, wine and cheese pairing, an Italian cooking class, and then we're also doing inside the PGA and VIP or virtual tailgating experience with NFL legends. So those events are taking place in April. We're getting really good feedback on them so far, but unfortunately I can't report on how they have gone.
It's around the corner though.
Around the corner, yes. We're looking forward to it. And then getting into 2022, this is the time of year when I would be planning our largest incentive for the winter. And our execs are a little hesitant to return. We typically do a beach and golf destination in the Caribbean, and they're hesitant to return right away to the Caribbean for 2022. So we will be watching to see what happens with the vaccines and the variants and the vaccine rollouts and the destinations, and of course what Canada will be doing with the whispers of the travel passport and what that means. So we'll just kind of take a back seat and watch how that all plays out. So we are looking for Canadian destinations and trying something different and new and closer to home for 2022.
That's definitely exciting to know that you're looking closer to home, and I'm sure that a conversation with Jennifer will set you up with lots of great ideas. Yeah. Because winter in Canada is it can be pretty special in certain parts of our country for sure. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. So I wanted to just invite Jennifer back, and so the three of us can chat more in more detail. And this is the time when I encourage everybody who is online, please put your questions in the chat box, and we will get to your questions because we have two people here who can have a lot of experience both on the planning side and what's going to happen as we look to the future and applying new trends to planning, and Jennifer, who has the vast experience with the incentive product here in Canada. So please participate in this conversation. I wanted to start off, and Jennifer, and just as you apply this new lens, and I know we are all kind of waiting, hoping that things are going to go back to whatever the new state is and what travel looks like. But when you're looking, and you talked about your kind of virtual micro incentive trips, do you see a trend for economical to break things down? So we used to travel in more of a larger group. Do you see it happening in smaller groups and people staying closer to maybe where their geographical location is? So say if you're in Toronto, you may want to look at Atlantic Canada for bringing your group because it's not that far away, or you may go to Manitoba or the prairies, or head out to BC. So are you looking at things like that for the closer future?
Sure. So there's actually a term that was coined, and I believe it was one of our partners, Joanne Burns-Miller, who said micro groups, these micro groups now. So we're looking at, yes, in answer to your question, there are talks we're hearing from some of our clients, we're hearing from planners, et cetera, as well as our DMC partners, that they're getting a lot of requests that these larger groups that used to be for 500, for example, are now getting broken up to 5 groups of 100, or, you know, that way. So it's the same programming. There's more planning that's involved in groups like that, because now you have 5 separate groups, for example, versus the 1. But it may move in that direction for the next little while because of travel restrictions or social and physical distancing in venues. So we are seeing more inquiries that are coming around about these smaller micro groups. And in answer to your question about more regional and domestic incentive programming, yes, and this is where I feel like the Canadian industry right now, and our Canadian planners and our agencies, our DMCs, we have such a great opportunity to showcase all of the product that we have. And we don't even know all of the product that we have. You talk to Canadians, they're unaware of some of the experiences that we have in our backyard and which province offers what, for example. So it's also educating and getting that messaging out to our Canadian industry of, look at all of this beautiful inventory that we have within our own backyard that you can keep. Traditionally outbound incentive groups within Canada, there's a great opportunity for that now. It's just educating and getting that messaging out and really showcasing that product.
Anything you'd like to piggyback on that, Carolyn, in terms of how you're applying your lens to that kind of planning?
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely looking at doing smaller events wherever we can, because it just makes it so much easier in one hand. It's a lot more work, but yeah, smaller the better.
Yeah. On that, I just like to sort of maybe talk about a little bit about Canada. And, you know, we're 9.1 million square kilometers of land, so making us the largest country in the world. So in terms of some of those micro trends about forest bathing, I do that every day. I'm very lucky because I live in the forest. But it's interesting because as I walk through the forest now and have my incentive hat on, it's how do I make that an experience for somebody else? So it's kind of interesting. Can you share, Jennifer, some of the incentive destination places in Canada that might surprise us? Because as we go smaller groups, it really does open up the doors for new destinations in Canada that can support smaller groups to come with really and deliver a real authentic experience.
Sure, and I do love these kind of questions, Perlene, because it gives me an opportunity to share what we're doing right now in terms of one of our pillars of destination development. And we're working with our Canadian partners right now to identify new product, new assets, creating these new assets and new programs to highlight these unique experiences that are within the smaller communities or destinations that may not be as well known for it as an incentive destinations. So it helps also support the recovery of some of our smaller communities as well. But I mean, a couple that come to mind, I mean, if you imagine kayaking up close and personal to a 10,000-year-old iceberg in Iceberg Valley off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, you know, and you're surrounded by the nature and the ocean and the marine life. Another one that would be great for micro groups would be aquagliding. So aquagliding on the Churchill River, Hudson Bay in Manitoba, where it's where you lay on a mat and you have a snorkel on and you're looking beneath you at these thousands of beluga whales that are swimming around. I mean, these are once in a lifetime bucket list experiences that we have in our backyard that people aren't that familiar with, you know, and internationally they're not that familiar with. So yeah, those are a few I would say.
On that, Carolyn, as destinations are repackaging themselves, and actually maybe not even repackaging, developing new offerings, because now they can participate, because I think our skew has changed. You know, the larger altogether groups of the past may not be that of the immediate future or in the coming years to come. Are you having any conversations with destinations and of what they can do and how can they support you in building the right program that you're still delivering that travel wish for your attendee and those that you're rewarding, but are you having those kinds of conversations, and what can some of the new suppliers that are joining us here today do to help you support you and help you do your job?
Definitely. I have started conversations with DMCs in planning for our 2020 incentive, and for years at Economical we've talked about making the group a little bit smaller, so this gives us the push to do that. And some of the things that some of the destinations and experiences that we're considering would be once in a lifetime ones that we've heard about for years but have never been able to do. So things like the Northern Lights in the Yukon, going on a polar bear safari in Churchill, Manitoba. Also, we can take advantage of an early golf season in Kelowna and throw in some horseback riding and amazing wine tours. And then also looking into new hotels like the Club Med Resort in Charlevoix that happens to be an all-inclusive resort very close to us. So excited about looking into those.
We have a question in from those tuned in, and the question is there more interest in individual incentives are you seeing from your organization or any research that you've been doing?
Individual being like one-on-one?
One-on-one or one with their family versus going together as a group.
Right. We haven't looked into that, but that's certainly an option for the super important brokers that we work with. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Jennifer, are you fielding any of those kinds of inquiries?
Sorry, Pauline, I heard just some static. Do you guys hear some static?
Oh, I'm not hearing.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit? Okay.
Could you just repeat the question, Pauline? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So one of the questions was, are we seeing any inquiries into individual incentive programs or traveling with families? Are you fielding those kinds of inquiries?
Sorry. Yes. So in answer to your question, we personally have not had those inquiries. However, when speaking with our DMCs and speaking with the agencies, we are, sorry, I think there might just be some technical issues. Okay, it's all gone. We're all good. Yes, so I am hearing that from our DMC partners. I'm hearing that from clients overseas, and you know, some of these organizations are now switching to offering the earners individual travel versus going in a group, because they spend all this time with this family, all this quality time, and they want to travel with their families. So there have been inquiries in that regard. However, what I'm also hearing on the other end is you won't get the same experience if you're doing an individual program. So you know, some of these wonderful top-notch incentive experiences are group experiences. You're able to go to these amazing offsite venues, these amazing experiences overall that you're encompassing as a team building, as a group. So I do believe that group incentives will come back, but right now in the short interim, I do see a rise of popularity of individual travel as well. So, and people like to customize too, right? I mean, they want to customize their program as well. So so that leads into it as well.
So this is a question for you, Jennifer. And as we move into what we hope will be more fluidity in travel in the early part of 2022, but as Carolyn mentioned, still a pause button on whether or not to travel south and hit the Caribbean. What are those destinations in Canada that could rival those sun destinations to keep our corporate incentives staying here, right here in Canada?
You know what, and that's the $1 million question, right? We get asked that all the time. But I mean, I did speak to one partner a couple months ago, and they said, you know, we need to embrace our winter. Winter is not a chore, and we need to embrace it, and we need to love it. So we have such great product from our hotels to our resorts to the experiences from dog sledding to the Northern Lights, all of that stuff for winter. We have so much to offer. But in regards to, you know, the beach and the sunset, we do have that as well. Look at the Sunshine Coast. Look at off the coast of BC and some of those beautiful resorts, the Nemo Bays, the Sonoras, the Wickenish. They are stunning, stunning resorts in the middle of the not middle of the ocean. They're on the coast, but surrounded by ocean. You have the Fogo Island on the other side, which is an amazing, amazing experience from their sustainability and, you know, they're giving back to the community. You can also say, you know, the Churchill, Carolyn had brought up our Churchill Wild or polar bear safari. That compares to the African safaris. I mean, where else are you going to go nose to nose with a polar bear? So it's figuring out how do we position ourselves, you know, if we know that we're up against a sun and sand destination, what is it that we have that is the same, you know, and maybe it is these wilderness resorts, these eco resorts, etc. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, you know, and I think as DMCs and hoteliers look at winter differently, like you said, when we change it, and there are things that we do traditionally in Canada during winter that we either do as a family or we do with friends and relatives, but that authenticity comes in. So that is an authentic, real winter experience from where you are. And people do find joy in sharing that with you. So I think it's how we look at winter differently.
I can use an example. When we were in Yellowknife last year, and it was a cold day, but they took us out to their ice palace, and it was this beautiful castle-like venue that it was built purely out of ice, and they have restaurants in there, they have a cocktail bar, they have, you know, and it was stunning, and you can just imagine what it would look like with the candles and the rugs, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience that you can't have anywhere else, but it's something that we have that we can showcase, and it's embracing our winter season as well. So, mm-hmm.
And I guess seasonality aside, you know, one of the latest things that we're doing is we're bringing guests over to Sable Island to see the wild horses. And it doesn't matter if it's raining or it doesn't matter if it's sunny, but you're on an island that is only inhabited by horses, and everything else goes away because you're caught up in that moment of how they live, how they survive, how they feed themselves. You learn about their habitat, and so yeah, so I think when you're immersed in the moment, it doesn't matter what the temperature is around you or what's happening, because you're really living that experience.
And that's incentives, right? That's the whole experiential reward, transformational travel. You just said it right there, Perlene.
Carolyn, a question for you. As you're planning your upcoming travel, if you look to 2022, do you see yourselves traveling at a more specific time of year? I know you talked about sun, maybe looking at the winter, but is that typically your pattern, or are your travel patterns going to change as you move forward?
Unfortunately, we're trying to stick to the same pattern because of annual results being available and strategy planning and sharing the strategy with our key partners for the year. So it is critical for us to maintain that timing for us.
And are you seeing any difference in pattern inquiries, Jennifer, coming in terms of what RFPs are looking for? Are we seeing any shift in pattern travel changes?
No, I mean, we're looking at, just like Carolyn had said, we're hopeful that we are getting requests in for the end of 2021 right now. There are programs on the book. And realistically, 2022 is maybe when we'll start seeing a more of an upkeep or more movement within the incentive area. But no, I mean, it's all dependent. It's dependent on the organization. It's dependent when their programs are, et cetera. So.
And just sort of stepping just a little bit back to when we were talking about, I guess, how we sell ourselves, winter, summer, spring, or fall, and I know that you just laid out the global strategy, Jennifer, with us, and incentive now being a part of that global strategy. Is there more to come on terms of how we brand ourselves and how we start to sell ourselves maybe differently?
Yes. In answer to your question, yes. So we have a great, and I wish we had our marketing director on this webinar. We have some great marketing campaigns that are coming up for 2021 to really push and elevate our message out there. Because we have executed this new incentive strategy, we do have more presence with a lot of industry, such as SITE, such as FICP, et cetera. So we're definitely pushing our message and leveraging our brand through all these multiple channels as well. But in terms of, our destination development and our asset development, we're in the process right now of working through that and really talking to our DMCs and our DMOs. One of the first steps that we're doing is Rendezvous Canada, which has been a Destination Canada signature event for many, many years. This year, Business Events is incorporated into that signature event because we're inviting our Canadian DMCs to be buyers this year. And what I mean by buyers is they are the ones who are going to be speaking with the different suppliers to let's talk about what new product we can sell, what new destinations can we promote, what do you have within your community. And with that, all of that information and all of those meetings, we can start building, our story of what's new in Canada and really leveraging that global brand.
To piggyback on that, Carolyn, do you get any internal resistance when you bring forward Canada as an idea of, where to go and what to do? Because as Canadians, I think in the past, we tended to always look outward to go to experience something. And we don't typically look inwardly to find those bucket list life experiences right here in our own backyard. So do you ever have any of those kinds of conversations inside and getting people to push beyond and really get them to look in their backyard?
That's a really great question. In the past, definitely, they would not, for the larger incentive, they would not want to consider Canada, and it's unfortunate, but it's really nice in a way that we can take a step back now and really look at Canada and all that it has to offer and take advantage of those opportunities. Yeah, who knows, maybe it'll be Canada all the way from here on out.
Yeah. In a recent conversation that I had with a client, and there is now a corporate mandate for the next 2 years to have all travel within Canada because there's a corporate commitment to help build back. And so it's interesting now to actually hear those conversations, because it's not a typical conversation that we would have had pre-pandemic.
And how amazing is that to hear as a country, right? How we're all unifying and really pushing what we have within our borders. So
Yeah, it really does beg the question that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Jennifer, as we have so many site members joining us here today. And, what role can Site Canada members play in being part of rebuilding the Canadian economy after what's been just a devastating disruption?
And that's a great question, Perlene. I would say for those of you who are in program design or you're in sales, what assets can we develop together to support our smaller communities? What assets do we currently have, but their story isn't being told or being able to be pushed out on different platforms? And how can you help get that story out there? Canadians, we're known for our hospitality, and just like you said, our love and our pride for our country. And we love to talk about our experiences. And that's why we have so much to offer coast to coast to coast, but our stories are powerful. Our experiences are powerful. And we want to leave the audience hungry and they want to be inspired and experience what we've expired. We do know that B2B is going to be different moving forward. We all know that. And people are going to be buying from those that they have relationships with, from those that they feel inspired from, but they'll also buy from great storytellers as well. So we're nice. Canadians are nice. And essentially the world needs a little bit of nice right about now.
And I do also, to piggyback and add to that, I believe that confidence in travel will be reinstated with confidence at home, with your ability to explore your own area. Because if we all feel safe at home and we all feel safe traveling within what we call home, it will then start to open up our minds to feel confident, because like you said, it's the distance isn't the issue, it's the safety that somebody shared with you. And I think that is something that we can be a part of changing and improving and giving people that confidence by giving them those local experiences. One of the questions just in is, so I'm going to throw it out first to the audience and then I'm going to come to you, Caroline. So is anyone in the audience planning something that has never been done before and creating a new experience themselves? If you have that, we'd love to see the essence of that in the chat. And we'd love to hear, and I know that you talked about the virtual tailgate with the NFL players, which really perked my ears because I'm a huge NFL fan and I love football. And I know you talked about wine tasting and I believe it was cheese, but are there other kind of virtual experiences or other types of experiences, Carolyn, that will fill sort of this year for your team, for them to experience, and anything that you found that was super unique that maybe you want to share with us without letting the cat out of the bag before it happens?
We had reached out to a DMC to see what they could do for us for like a virtual trip to Italy or France, and kind of talked about how we could spend an afternoon in Italy, and maybe we land in Rome and go to a museum there, and then we take the train to Tuscany and have a wine and pasta meal, and then we would go to a museum and do watch art restoration and like a bunch of different things that they could kind of get a sense and feeling of being there. And we'd send them a lovely gift box in advance that would have the cooking requirements and maybe a chef's hat and some fun things to make them feel like they're actually going to Italy. So we just kind of had that discussion and I was really excited by it, but it got turned down for now. So it's kind of in our back pocket if something else comes up. But I like that idea of having a virtual vacation for the
that's amazing. And maybe you could add Stanley Tucci to it, because he's all
yes,
about Italy right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've read about people getting the museum to themselves and a self-guided tour into the basement of what's curated, but hasn't been displayed yet, and doing those kinds of things, which are to me just quite fascinating, because I'd love to see what's in the basement of the AGO because I'm sure there's lots of stuff there that you've never seen, but that's great. Jennifer, one of the questions we have is, are you seeing a difference in inquiries in the age groups, and within those age groups, the inquiry of what is it that they're looking for to do, or are the things to do changing by age?
So that's a great question. And it's funny, this morning I just spoke to a US incentive agency, and we were talking about demographics of incentive programs moving forward. And there is a shift in demographics and a shift in age groups for sure. I mean, essentially the younger generation are driving these new incentive programs, are driving these new experiences. What I can say, and just tying it back to our sector strategy and what we're doing with the incentive segment is, we're doing these deep dives into these 6 key sectors, and really trying to understand the demographics, psychographics, and the values of each individual group. So really truly understanding what a tech group wants versus what an advanced manufacturing group wants, what a finance insurance versus a pharma group wants. So by understanding what they see or what they want in their experiences, we're able to tailor that product or work with our partners to tailor specifically to that age group or demographic. So.
Talking about the vertical markets that you're now operating within, which is, definitely a strong strategy. I applaud you for going in that route. How would a supplier maybe new to site get involved and make you aware of what they might be working on in their area? So anything you can share with folks, Jennifer, on how to get involved and how to be a part of that, of your growth strategy for as we move forward?
Well, what I would, like I said earlier, I love to talk. I love to have conversations. So I would love to have these conversations with any of our Canadian suppliers that are coming in, new to this market, new to site, et cetera, and truly wanting to understand where they fit in the national strategy, both for the sector and the incentive. There is room for all of our partners right now to play within this strategy. It's just under which bucket. So my suggestion, without going into drawing this out, is please call me. I'm sure that our contact details are going to be shared after this webinar, but depending on where you fit within that bucket, we would love to share and see how we can work together. So.
And is there anything missing right now that you wish you had product on, that if somebody's listening and is creating new product within Canada, are there kind of any buckets right now that we're kind of missing out on and need some DMCs to step up, or hoteliers or DMOs?
Well, I will say there's opportunities for growth. That's how I would look at it. And that's why we are working with the DMCs for Rendezvous Canada this year. So these are the questions that we're asking. Where are we? Where is the opportunity to build product? What areas, what communities, what experiences are we missing the opportunity on, based on the micro trends that we're starting to see and observe? So they are going in with a fresh slate to say, what do you have within your community? What do you have here? What I will say is that it would we are working closely with ITech as well, and really working together to align and leverage the experiences and the offerings on that side as well. So I'm excited for Rendezvous. That's in May, and I'm excited to see what comes out of that and what kind of product we can create with our partners and our suppliers.
I'm excited too. It'll be my first rendezvous, so I'll be joining you this coming May. Carolyn, we have an inquiry. As you do look south to the warmer climate in the sun, what countries might you be looking at, and have they influenced you in their handling of COVID, to sort of look at where you might go in 2022?
Good question. Like I said, vaccines have always been our driver. So making sure that everyone has a vaccine in place that works, and then dealing with the Canadian government restrictions and how they change over the coming year will be something to watch. So destinations that we have considered are potentially Hawaii. So it was funny to see that come up on the list as the number 2 for the Americas, because it is an American group of islands. So knowing that hoping that the vaccine rollout would have taken place there. Other American islands such as Puerto Rico were also considered. So as much as I know the venues are doing so much work to make people feel safe, for us, it's 100% about the vaccines and making sure that those are in place. And then we will start to look at how the venues are handling cleaning policies. And I know everything has always been clean as it is, so I'm not super concerned about those things. It's more always the vaccines.
Vaccine comes
Yeah.
back to the vaccine. I
Yeah.
wear short sleeves now every day, just in hopes that I can get jabbed. With that being said, obviously, the other hard hit part are our friends in the airlines, and airlift has been devastated. I look at my own area, and we've gone from 43 routes to 3 in our home city. What role are you looking at as you look to the future? Are you making decisions based on airlift, or is it going to be comfortable knowing that you're likely going to have to do a connection, because nonstop flights may take a little bit longer to come back as we roll back into traveling?
Yeah, traditionally we've always looked at destinations with nonstop flights, and I don't think that's going to be an option going forward, at least for the near future, which is why we thought, well, Hawaii would be a multi-flight destination anyhow, so why not make it easier for our friends out west to join?
And Jennifer, on that note, on the airline note, is Destination Canada, having conversations with our national airlines? Do we have a sense of when we're going to start to see, I guess, more air travel and more lift happening?
There's conversations, of course, happening at the higher level. But we're working with our airline partners to be part of our business events activations that are happening, that are, fingers crossed, are still going to be happening throughout the end of the year. So we are supporting our airlines for sure.
Well, I know I'm the first to book a ticket soon as I can do that without having to quarantine. I realized for myself, travel is a huge part of who I am, who the family is, and we are all planning where's that first stop we're going to go to just as soon as we all come back. This is your last chance for those who are listening to drop in your question in the chat box. And I'm looking, and I think we may actually not have any more. Is there any parting thoughts that both of you would like to share with the group as words of encouragement as we all kind of look forward to moving, I keep saying moving in 2021 and well into 2022. Carolyn, anything you want to share?
My heart goes out to, makes me teary, all the venues that are struggling. And my son is going to school right now in the Caribbean, so I've actually traveled 3 times since COVID to visit him. So I know that the airlines and the venues are doing all that they can. So I just hope we can be together again soon.
We all do. Thank you for that. Jennifer?
Well, touching on that very beautiful comment, Carolyn, I think one thing that this has shown us is how we're all coming together, and the support that we all have. If you're a buyer, if you're a client, if you're a supplier, you're a DMO, you're a DMC, we've all come together in these past 12 months. And that has been beautiful to see. And we all need each other to recover and go through this recovery journey together. So it has been a difficult journey for everyone, but we will come out of this, and we will come out of this together. So.
Well, on that note, it's been an absolute privilege to spend time with both of you. And one of the things that I've been working on in terms of my presidency with SITE for 2021, and I'll share more at the AGM. So those watching, if you haven't signed up, join us on March 30th. But I believe that we need to stand together and stay together. And that is our way to building back better. So I'll share more of what that is. And I think our conversation today was just about that, how to stand together and stay together, and we will get moving in 2021. And I thank you both for your time and expertise. Thank you for sharing, and for everybody watching and tuning in. Thank you for spending an hour with us. And we look forward to hosting you again with our new education series, Sparks. So thanks all, and we'll see y'all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.